And hello, everybody. Welcome to the Podcaster Nation. My name is Rory Paquette. I am, as always, your very humble host. I'm so happy to be here. This is such a great project that we're working on, and I have such an incredible guest today. Very powerful young lady who I've been following for a very long time. We met ages and ages ago when I was in a really bad spot, and she was on her way up doing some really cool MLM stuff. She has branched into podcasting and has a very successful podcast called, and I think I can say it on this network. Yeah, Listen, Bitch. She's written it's several books, and I believe that they're called Once Upon a Time Bitches. And she's nodding her head right now. All right, folks,
Yeah.
welcome, Branden LaNette. How you doing, Branden?
What's up? This is so cool. So Rory and I were just chatting before this started, and you guys, I am just in awe. Like, he's definitely making some moves right now, and the stuff you have going on is just like, I'm like, wow. And I'm honored to get to be a part of that because you're on fire, man. The world needs this.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I didn't pay you for that endorsement either. Just make sure everybody knows that,
Not
right?
yet. I'd send the invoice after. I keep a tally mark. I keep
Right
a
on.
tally.
I got you. All right. Well, thank you for that. One of the things that I want to have on this show, we're building a community here of podcasters. And I know in one of your episodes, you hit it right in the head, and I've said it to a million times. People who listen to podcasts do not understand what
Mm-mm.
goes into doing a podcast on any kind of regular basis, the energy you've got to have just to start the episode, the thought and everything that goes into it, the planning, the equipment, out of pocket. And so what I'm trying to do is I want to bring podcasters together to
Mm-hmm.
tell their stories and spread the word. And then it's the old the rising tide raises all ships, type of
Yes.
thing, because
Mm-hmm.
we should all help each other and benefit from one another. And so that's really what this is about. And I appreciate you jumping in to something that's
Yeah.
brand new and unproven.
Of course. And you know what? So it's I'm in a bunch of groups, like a bunch of women marketing groups, women business groups, podcasting groups. I'm in these groups, and the my biggest pet peeve right now is that people think they need so much to start, okay? And no matter what we say about the cost, you guys, I'll tell you, I run my podcast for less than, let's see, my website, which I count that because it's included in the deal. So that's like $40. I pay $10 to Audio Boom to upload it to everything. So we're at $50. I have a Mac computer, which was ideally an investment if I feel like it's just worked for me. And then my microphone was $100 and some nice headphones. That's it. Very minimal to do this. And I've got people on here like, pay for my class. You need to give me $2,000 and I'll help you start your podcast. And when I first started, I had this lady from California. She read my book. She's like, I love your books, Branden. You really need a podcast. $25,000 she tried to get me on the hook for a podcast, and I was gutted. I
Oh,
was devastated because I didn't know, and I was like, man, I'm never going to be able to do the podcast. I'm never going to be able to do it.
25
uh
grand.
$25,000. She kept a straight face. And you know what sucks is this is where I learned how people buy their followers, because I'm looking at her Instagram account and I'm thinking, this doesn't make sense. She has like 100,000 followers, but 3 people like her post. She never has comments. I'm like, something's wrong. So I started doing the research, and it was just this whole facade. She paid to have herself put in a magazine, which is like $12,000. So she put money into stuff to do this, but it was all fake. And that has inspired me to just, especially with the Listen Bitch podcast, like, people need to know to keep it simple, stupid. Okay. It's the KISS method.
Mm.
You don't overthink it. I don't edit. I don't do a lot of things, and it's working for me. It's working for me. I Every month my analytics are up and we're growing and we're going strong. And I think there will be a point where I'm probably going to have to put my big boy pants on and elevate a little bit. That's what happens. But you
Right.
guys, I mean, my second anniversary is coming up in August, second year of doing it, and over 340 episodes, and I keep it very simple. Very simple.
No, I appreciate all of that because I started very similar to
Yeah.
what you're saying. I went even cheaper. I mean, I
Yeah.
did like the 2 weeks free on Buzzsprout. And I think my
Yes.
microphone headset combo at the time from Amazon was like 59.99 or something. It
Yep.
was so cheap,
Yep.
and it was so bad that I had to be like right up on top of it,
Yeah.
like almost like this. And I was in a closet in the basement with like
Yep.
blankets in front of me because my sound was so terrible. And
Yeah.
well, I mean, but it's so simple to do, and it doesn't have to cost anything like that.
And that's the
25 grand.
key. Yeah. that's the key right there. I'm telling you, I will not, if people are like, I want a podcast, what do I need to do? I'm like, just do the podcast.
To
Like,
do
just
it,
get a Zoom account. I record it on Zoom, and Rory does too. That's what we're hanging out on right now.
right?
So it is literally like you just do it. And it's the same thing that I've learned with people writing a book. That everybody overthinks it. If you want to do it, you're just going to do it. Like, you want to write a book, just write a damn book, and then you figure it out later, because everything is figure outable. And that was the same thing with the podcast. I have one of my tattoo artists, actually, who is a great friend to me, started doing a podcast with this guy Bob Ruff. I don't know if you guys listen to crime. He does Truth and Justice, so it's a true crime podcast. I went to his house one day and I'm like, break it down for me. What am I doing? Talked on, we talked for 30 minutes. He said, keep it simple. And this dude has a professional, like Joe Rogan style studio, where he literally built a studio for his stuff, but his podcast is probably top 10 of crime podcasts.
Nice.
So he's
Yeah.
he's huge in this. And he was like, I'm telling you, just keep it very simple. Start where you are.
Nice.
That's it. And that was it. There was no, if you really want to do it, you're going to just do it. And it was a point in my career where my husband and I kept saying, what do we need? How do we get the book out? How do we get, how do we expand our audience? How do I get, more people in the container of Branden LaNette, and it's really just, I want to inspire people to step into their potential, man. Everybody's just like too scared to make the moves, when really you're just counting too many people. You're factoring too many people in. You make this about you and God, and you say, okay, if I'm going to be the best version of myself, how can I help other people do the same thing? Let's just do it together. So it was literally, I needed to be on podcasts. That was our move. And I said, you know what? I'm tired of trying to get on podcasts, because people are going to scam you there too. Thousands of dollars to be on this podcast or do this podcast. We'll promote your podcast. And when I'd follow the trails, these are all people that don't have followings. They don't have, they just don't have what they're telling me they're going to give me. And that's hard for me. I'm like, listen, I've learned the hard way in a lot of things, and this isn't going to work out. So I'm just going to do it myself. Did it myself.
Good for you. I mean,
Yeah, it's a great time.
your entire persona, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The person that is Branden, okay?
Yeah.
You formed that over a long period of time.
Oh yeah.
And I only know that because I've known you for a long time. And
You were there for the beginning,
yeah.
literally.
When you were doing,
Literally.
yeah, you were selling some products online.
Yep.
And I called you to inquire about them. And it
Yep.
was really funny because your name's Branden and my name is Rory. I thought you were a guy. You thought I was a girl.
I thought you were a girl. Yep. I know
So,
two Rorys and they're both girls. So we were definitely both shocked. That was
I know.
my first company. I think literally you're probably the first person I ever talked to in person about the business. I had no idea what I was doing. No idea. And that's, you guys have to start somewhere. It's the same thing now. Like, we don't know what we're doing. None of us do. Okay. We're just one step at
That's
a time.
funny.
We keep making the moves, and that's it.
I never would have guessed that. I mean, when we met at Starbucks that day, you were like a boss. Yeah, you
Oh,
were
that's
like,
hilarious.
this is
No,
it. Bam. And I was just like, wow, she's really got her stuff together.
I still hold embarrassment from those years. Trust me, that trauma comes back to me
Oh, that's awesome.
over and over. So I've grown a lot through that, and it is what it is. But
Well, tell our listeners about you because your story and what you've been through with, your I mean, marriages, kids,
mhm,
you know what I mean? And
mhm.
you've got 6.
Yep,
So you know what you're talking about. I mean, you're speaking from the
yeah,
heart on this.
yep,
You've got, a zoo of pets from
yep,
what I've seen on Facebook. You have done a lot of independent stuff. You've worked from home. You've
hmm
done everything that people sit at home and think about launching things. You just go launch them and do them,
just
which
do it.
is awesome. You
Yeah,
just do that Gary V thing where you just take messy action and like launch,
yeah.
see what happens later. So tell our folks, who is Branden? Like, just give them your story, and a little bit about kind of like where you've been, who you are, and what brings you into wanting to, empower women, help people,
Yeah.
the whole bit.
How much time do we have, Rory? Is there like a buzzer that's going to go off? Because this can get deep.
I
No.
tell you, well, first, let
Um,
me answer the question. I'm on as long as you want to be on because
yeah,
I don't put a
perfect.
time constraint on my podcast like this. No, 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 no. When we talk on
Right.
the radio later, there'll be a time constraint. We got to worry about
Right.
it. But for right
Gotcha.
now, nah, no. So you go, and I know you're a podcaster, so I know you can keep it all concise.
Right.
Don't give me any
We're,
grief.
we're going to try here. We're going to try. Um, so yeah, I was married for I don't even know how long anymore because I've just kind of married for the second time to the same person. I'll just throw that in there. Okay. Married the second time to the same person. At some point in our marriage, we threw a dart in the map because we wanted to get away from family. Because I think we knew we were toxic, but we blamed everybody around us instead. And just were like, we have to start out on our own. So we loaded 3 kids up in a U-Haul with $5,000 to our name and ended up in Michigan from Colorado. So we drove for 2 days straight, got out. The kids fell in love with the lake. It was beautiful. So we started building a home here, added baby number 4. And I've always wanted to be a writer. Like my whole dream, my whole life, every English teacher I've ever had is like, you're a writer. You have to write, Branden. You just have to write. So that's what I wanted to do. And I started getting noticed. I was querying agents. I was getting responses. Um, Things were happening. I won a big contest in Chicago and I was to do a reading at one of the big libraries in the city from a short story that I wrote. And it was just a lot. A lot of things were happening and my dreams were coming true. And I was a stay-at-home mom with these 4 beautiful babies. And like, I thought I was having the time of my life. And I get an ultimatum one day. You could be a writer or you could be married to me. And, at first I'm like, you're joking, right? He was very serious. I was not allowed to go to Chicago. I wasn't going to do the readings. Um, I didn't get to be me. And I think in hindsight, obviously if we know now what we knew then, or we
Sure.
know then what we know now, whatever,
Right.
things would be very different. But I was never me. I was never me. I was who he wanted me to be, who I thought I had to be for him. And so when that final ultimatum came through, I was like, all right, I'm moving 4 kids into a tiny 2-bedroom apartment. I'm out. I'm out. Like you're gonna put a cap on my dreams. I'm out. So anyway, um, I'm bartending at that moment in that transition, and I met my current husband, and that was it. That was it. He stepped in to take on 4 kids, which who the hell would do that? Like that guy needs therapy. But he's my hero, stepping in for all that. And we added a couple of babies and he let me be me. And I think that is my origin story, is that I finally loved myself enough to set some standards of who I wanted to be and who I was going to allow in my life. Never again would I be with someone who wanted to dim my light, basically. And so, Benjamin came through and was just like, do it, pushed me out of every comfort zone. And every time I'd want to crawl back under the covers, he'd rip them off and be like, nope, you wanted to do this. You're doing this. We're doing this. I remember going to my first event, a networking event in New Orleans, went by myself. I knew nobody. And that was terrifying because I've been a stay-at-home mom my whole life. I wasn't out there with the people. So it was wild to me. But I never looked back. Everything has just been about pushing that dream. And, you know, I still wanted to be a writer. It started to look a little different. And it took me 10 years to actually get the book published. And it was just about having things done and not stopping on the conversation, because I'll tell everybody, I've felt like I was the queen of rejection. Everywhere I looked, rejection, 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 rejection in marriage, rejection with family, rejection with life, rejection with business, with my dreams, with all of it. Um, and it's that matter of just like, well, it's okay if they say no, because I feel like if you ask enough people, there will always be somebody that says yes. And somebody said yes. I got it, somebody said yes. So we did the books. I continued with business, and we kind of went through a transition where my youngest was 5. And I love bartending, you guys. I did it in Colorado when I was young. I started at 16 and I just genuinely love it. I have a psychology uh major. That was my thing, and I feel like it just kind of fit perfectly there for my, who I am, just being in that space. I still was kind of using it. So I loved it. I was getting to do that for a while. And then my husband got a promotion. We reshifted. And so I went to stay at home mom again. And now just recently, I was like, okay, I love this, but I need like one day out a week. So I'm back to one day a week bartending. I do the podcast 5 days a week. Um, and that's it. I'm working on another book. And I think, with this rejection, you guys, because I emancipated. My mom signed her rights off on me when I was 12. Okay. Probably could have started with that. But that rejection like went deep. Okay. It wasn't just because I got divorced twice to the same person. It was like ingrained in my bloodline because that family was toxic and there was just a lot of rejection. So I emancipated at that time and got my GED when I was 15. I was in college by 16 and out there navigating the world on my own since then, which is crazy because I'm 44 and I still feel like a baby. I'm like, who lets me adults? Like, why am I making these decisions? But all of this stuff has been what has moved me to knowing that I have to step into my passion, to step into the core of who I am because I'm responsible for lives and I wanted those curses broken. I wasn't going to turn my back on my kids. And sometimes, I mean, if you're a parent, there's this little moment of just like getting in the car and driving away and never coming back. I think we all have those little moments here and there where I genuinely like, man, I could probably just get in the car and drive away. Could I? No. But you go through a lot and it's about not taking it personal because everybody's going through a lot and sitting at home feeling sorry for yourself, not taking massive action, not making moves. That's not serving you or anyone. And it's actually, I mean, my foundation is God. And when I'm not doing something, I'm not honoring him. And we got a hell of a chance here. Hell of a chance, clean slate. I mean, literally, someone was strung up on a cross for us. I don't take that lightly. I can't just take this life for granted. Someone did something massive for me that I don't know if I could do that for anybody, you know? So we can't mess around anymore. You got to make some moves. Take massive action.
I love it. Now you started because you weren't always in the personal development space necessarily. The whole
No.
time I've known you. You kind of, when did you transition into that? I'm just curious.
It was because of my first MLM experience. Being in that company, I mean, you got to have some thick skin, especially when I feel like we're all in sales. Okay. So anybody that's trying to tell you that they're not a salesman is full of shit. Cause like we're natural salespeople. I just sold my kid on eating her lunch before she got,
Totally
you
agree.
know, her peanut butter spoon or whatever. So in learning that, I realized like I have a lot of issues about that rejection. I was taking everything personal, always thinking I wasn't good enough. And I went through a really, probably after I published my first book, was the realization of like, I really got to dig deep and figure something out because a lifelong dream came true. And I was the most depressed and broken I'd ever been. And it's because I put everything into this one thing, thinking this one thing would make a difference in my life. But everywhere you go, there you are. And if I'm the same person after I publish a book as I am before I published the book, then nothing really changes, does it? So that's where I just really, between sales and just watching my personal life, not feel good. I didn't have joy. I didn't have peace. I didn't have happiness. I felt like I was in turmoil, like tornado energy all the time. I was super reactive. I was just like off the rails and everything was so much. And, we're adding kids, we're adding pets. My business is growing. And, there was a point where, y'all, I sold out to the devil. I didn't even know it. I didn't know it because the whole time I've never not believed in him. Okay. I've never not believed in God. And all of a sudden I'm getting into this energy work and I feel really great about it. I start doing Reiki. I start going off the rails in meditation, doing astral projection. Then I'm reading cards, but it's fine, you guys, because the universe is God, right? And I'm pointing everybody to the universe who is God. And I love God and I pray to God. When I would do Reiki, I'm like, God, please, move this for me. And I don't know what happened one day. I burned everything down. I just realized like, obviously it was a come to Jesus moment where I'm like, I'm doing the devil's work, man. This has to stop. I don't know what happened. I don't know how I got so lost. Um, I honestly, I know what happened. I had people praying for me that knew they couldn't really come to me and have the conversation, but they knew that there was purpose. I had a heartbeat, I had a purpose, and it wasn't that. So, yeah, I burned my business down, all of it to the ground,
Wow.
coaching business, the Reiki, threw all my stuff out. Like I started over from scratch. What has it been? January is when I finally came out of hiding. Really?
Yeah, I know you were gone for a little while there.
Oh yeah.
Wow. I mean, yeah, because I remember that you had the coaching business. I remember seeing that.
Yep.
And so everybody knows, I mean, I've followed you on social media since we met, and
Yeah.
you're inspiring, So I mean, I love the stuff you put up. And we're like-minded on a lot of things. So, when you
Yeah.
throw up certain posts, I'm like, yeah, that's right.
Right.
I'm sitting in the background giving you applause. But the that's big. I mean, to
Huge.
work all that time and you've written books and stuff. I
Yep.
mean, you're published, and then something hits you and you go, I'm done. I can't do this. I got to change. I got to change everything I'm doing.
Yep.
I just did a podcast on one of my other podcasts with a guy, Justin Wegner, who used to be with Backbone Swag, and now he's started Day 41 Apparel. And he's my 150th episode coming up.
Nice.
Which at the time of this podcast, anyway, depending on when this one comes out, it might be out already. I don't know.
Right.
But he had a very similar story. He built $1 million business,
Hmm.
on a motivational shirt thing, and it hit him, like lightning. And he
Yep.
said, "I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing," and he
Right.
changed everything to a faith-based business,
Hmm.
and brought God into his life like that. And to
Yep.
hear the almost the exact same story, coming from you about how you changed is
Yeah.
starting to think people are telling me something.
He's out
Yeah.
there, man. He's out there. But
So,
it's, even with that coaching, I won't get back into it in the space I was on because it was based on like that energy work. It was based on, leaning into my intuition, not God's word. And now when
mm,
people reach out to me because they do, I still help people, but it's a matter of like, I bring out the Bible. I'm like, you don't need to hire a coach. Like I've always said my whole life, I'm like, there's no guidebook in life. And I've read the Bible a few times, but never as who I am today. So who I am today, this is all new to me. And I'm like, there's a guidebook. There is a literal guidebook for our lives, you guys. And it's blowing my mind. I have a schedule where I read every day. And it's blowing my mind. We have a guidebook. Okay. So whoever has been saying that we don't, they're wrong.
all right. So you
They're
make this
wrong.
massive change. What moves you into, because I know you've been on social media forever. What moves you into podcasting as a vehicle to, get that message out? What made you say, I want to become a podcaster?
Um, for one, okay, social media grosses me out. Like, I want to be someone different. Okay. I'm not going to have a sex podcast where we're talking about, how many times this guy made his girl do whatever. And there's so much trash out there. And then you've got people like, the Hawk Tuah girl who go viral. And this is what people are spending time watching. And I think, I want to burn it all down, move to the mountains, and just be done with society. Or I can just dig deep and commit to showing up every day to let people see me grow through it, to grow through the bullshit. And anybody who's listened to my podcast from the beginning to now, I'm not the same person. In fact, I'm on a hiatus right now. I did one episode last week. I'll do one episode this week. Just gearing up, doing, I've had a lot of evolution inside myself with my relationship with Christ to just kind of figure out what am I going to do?
Hmm.
What am I going to do next? And, so to decide I want to be a podcaster was really just that. I want to help people. I've gone on the premise since day one, since my mom signed her rights off on me. I looked at my kids and I said, I'm gonna be the parent I never had. Right. I looked at my husband. I'm going to be the spouse I never had. Everything I do in my life is like, you have to become what you need the most. You have to become what you need the most. And so in that moment, I needed a voice. I needed a voice to help me kind of process and work through the stuff. And so that's what I do on Listen Bitch, where I'm just like, listen, bitch, like we are here. We're all in the arena. None of us are getting out of here alive. And life doesn't pause for you to get your shit together. It just doesn't. It doesn't. And so I see so many people, with these excuses, and every excuse they've ever used was every reason I had to keep going. Oh, you're broke? I'm broke too. I'm in a hustle, Oh, you're not feeling good about yourself? Well, neither am I. I'm going to work through that. I just feel like people need an extra beacon of hope, to know that they're not the only ones getting mud thrown at them, you know?
Yeah.
And social media is so fake with like the people that, even my publishers, great story. My publishers are amazing. I adore them. but they did a book for someone once, and they said it was the worst experience of their lives because she would never allow them to talk about any flaws, any issue, any mistake. Like she had to paint this picture perfect life. And they were like, we can't do this. And I think that's what social media does, right? They paint out this whole, we've got Photoshop, we've got the perfect families, the big house, the fancy cars. We have all these things that just affect us every single day. Whether you admit it or not, it subconsciously affects you watching all these things. And I know it's annoying to people because they always think that the people with money are the people that say money doesn't matter. But that's not true. It's not about the things anymore. It's about your peace. Like that's it. We're playing the long game here on your happiness and your forever. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I don't want to die at all. And the only way I know that that's going to be okay is if I get right with Jesus, right? And that's me sitting at home feeling sorry for myself, being depressed, talking about myself terribly, like I'm a loser, I'm not successful, I don't have a million downloads on my podcast. Like I can beat myself up all day, and that's not bringing honor to anyone.
Yeah. And so that's the message you want to get out to everybody,
Yeah, absolutely.
is to not give into that.
Don't give
Now,
into that.
now I know that you use social media, to promote
Yeah.
your podcast and stuff. Do you promote
Yep.
it anywhere else? I'm just curious.
I haven't. No.
Hmm.
I haven't branched out to like a lot of things. And that's part of what I'm thinking about this week. I'm thinking, because eventually I'm at my 2-year mark almost over. I think I'm at 350 episodes. I think it's 350. And I think it's time to grow up a little bit, and I could do like people, can pay to subscribe now to see videos on Patreon and stuff like that. I'm just like feeling it out to
Hmm.
see if that's going to be a thing for me because I didn't realize how much people really are into YouTube, and I'm not there. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
So when I'm out and I
yeah.
talk about my podcast, they're like, "It's on YouTube." Oof, no. So
Right.
I have some thinking to do about.
Well, don't feel bad. I did the same exact thing in my sort of graduation of podcast. I mean, I've been all
Yeah,
audio, occasional video, and once in a while I throw the video up on YouTube and it gets a few looks. But I've done
yeah,
literally nothing to really build the YouTube.
exactly.
And we're on Rumble also. You know what I mean? Because it's
Yep.
you got to get everybody looking at it. And with my other podcast, YouTube doesn't like us very much.
Yeah,
So,
I just feel like
you know.
social media doesn't like me very much, period. So it's
That's
okay.
possible. I know you've been put in jail like more than anybody else I think I've ever
It's
seen.
insane. And I'm surprised because I put some stuff up lately that I've not even gotten a warning about, and Facebook is still paying me. They're paying me. So I'm like, I'll just ride this little money gravy train for a minute until, they realize,
I
I don't
mean,
know.
take it, right?
Yeah,
You got to fund this
exactly.
whole thing somehow. Good for
Exactly.
you. That's great. What I mean, you've answered a lot of the questions that I would like to ask, the
Oh,
people
yeah.
that I'm interviewing because you're just an awesome interview. But what do you love the most about podcasts and what do you hate the most?
Okay. So if I was ever going to burn this shit down, it'd be on one of those days where I thought I hit record and I didn't. And I had the most fire episode I've ever had. And I've done this more than once. Okay. Literally wanted to off myself in some of those moments because I'm like, no, this was the most amazing episode I've ever done. And the top 3 that I've done it to, I've never gone back and redone it because I put so much energy into them. And for some reason, they just weren't meant to be put out. So I think that is the worst. Okay. That's the absolute worst.
Ouch.
Um, and my favorite thing is just the feedback. Definitely the feedback. There's not a day that I post that someone isn't like, man, thank you so much for talking to me,
Yeah.
you know? And I love that it's just a mirror reflection. I'm literally telling people what I'm going through, and we work through it. I figure out my game plan of like, okay, I'm struggling here. How am I going to get through this? I don't sugarcoat it like I'm on some pedestal. Um, no, no. Nobody would want to trade places with me. I promise you that. So I never want, people are always like, I thought you had your shit together. Trust me, girl, you don't want to trade places with me. It's my arena is like XL, and I've got 10 fighters coming at me at once, plus kids, plus animals, all of it. So trust me, you don't want to trade places. But I love the feedback, man. It's making a difference.
That's great. I feel the same way. When I first started one of my other podcasts, and I was in like episode 9, I think it was, and I hadn't gotten a single message. I hadn't gotten anything from anybody. And I was like, is anybody even listening to this? Is it just
Right.
me talking into space? And I put out an episode about bullying,
Yeah.
and about how some scars don't ever heal. And I got out of nowhere like 60 plus responses. A lot of people I knew, and they were like, dude, you got bullied? You got
Yeah.
bullied? And it was just amazing what happened. I mean, I had people who were on Facebook, and they were like, man, I had no idea that this happened to you. And then they started telling their stories,
Yeah.
and I had 2 guys that actually on Facebook said, hey, I just listened to Rory talk about this. This is my story. And they wrote it out on Facebook.
Wow.
And so it's one of those where you stop and like you said, you're hitting these lives and you go,
Hmm.
wow, what if I hadn't put that podcast out?
Right.
Then this poor guy's still carrying that around with him. And so's
Hmm.
this guy, and so's that. And so I get exactly what you mean. With podcasting, you get to speak directly to people,
Yep.
and they can, when they hear you talking, if you're doing it well, and you do,
I
then
appreciate
they
that.
feel like you're talking to them.
Right.
And a lot of it is because you really are when you're
I
doing the
am.
podcast. That's what it's about. I know that's one of the things about when I talk to people who are new, and
Yep.
whenever I'm talking to folks online and stuff. Oh man, hey, this is great. I love what you're doing. Um, I want to start my own, and that's one of the things that I'm always telling them is make sure you're talking to the people that you're talking
Yeah.
to.
And the best thing is because people have asked me this, like I go live all the time. I do TikTok lives every day. I go live and I talk to one person. So when I do the podcast, I'm thinking of one specific person
Mm.
to talk to. So that way I'm not overwhelming myself of like trying to talk to everybody because that's squirrely. If you talk to one person every time you do an episode and you think about what is this person struggling with? What did they wake up thinking today? How do I want them to feel before they put their head down tonight? And you just focus on that one person is usually me. Okay. It is literally what I go through. So it's that one person and it just keeps you hyper focused. That way you don't get off the rails and overwhelmed because it's overwhelming to think I have to talk to an audience of 400 people tonight. That's insane. If I was thinking about a whole audience of 400 people, or if I just hyper focused on I'm going to talk to one person tonight and there's going to be some other people in the room, it makes the conversation more intimate. It keeps you more focused and you can step into your purpose a lot better with focus and clarity. It just makes it so much easier as a podcaster.
Absolutely. Um, the last question that I'm going to be asking everybody that I interview is, what's your best advice? Now, you've given a lot of advice
Yeah.
just in everything you've been talking about. So, it might be a repeat of something you've already said, but as you sit back and you think about your journey and what you've done, and, your best piece of advice might be make sure you hit record,
Yes,
but,
definitely.
but someone who's starting new.
Yeah.
Okay, because as experienced podcasters, we should all be able to reach out to one another. And
Yeah.
I think that within our group and within our podcast that we're building here, we are all going to be able to reach out to one another for, questions and things like that. But
Absolutely.
for someone who's new, someone who's listening
Yeah.
that's going, man, I think I want to start one. I probably, or I really do. What's your biggest like red light? Hey, this is really important. What's your best piece of advice for newbies?
Take the action. It's not about I'm going to start this tomorrow. If it's not important enough for you to start today, you don't really want it.
Nice. That's huge.
Just start.
That's absolutely huge. Love that. Love that. All right. Anything else for the good of the order?
No, I love this. I love that there's going to be a podcast community because I need a group chat where I can complain when I lose all my work because nobody else understands it. Okay.
I'm really
Nobody
glad you
gets.
said that because
Have you ever done it before?
what's that?
Like thought you hit record and you didn't.
Once.
Okay. Well, at
And
least you
so,
learn from your mistakes.
uh-huh. And so now every time I start it and I do my intro and then I stop it and then I listen back to the intro to make sure not only that it recorded, but that it's good because I've had the settings off and it
Yeah.
and it sounds like I'm talking like this or something, which is
Yeah.
horrible. And I've had to just junk the whole podcast because it's not
Ugh,
listenable. I mean, they got recorded, but it
yeah,
sounds like I'm talking inside of a steel can. And so I do my, like 5 seconds of intro and then I stop. And then I go back and
that's
listen to it
great.
again. That's on the solo episodes because, on these with Zoom, you're much safer, so to speak,
Yeah,
because it literally says recording started,
right.
when you start. But yeah, I've done that. So I did it once and I know what you mean. That
It's
struggle
rough
was
out there,
real.
guys. It's
All right.
rough.
Branden, if anybody, and I bet they will, if anybody wants to reach out to you, wants to find out more about you, your products, what you're doing now, what your new, sort of relaunch is going to be when you're done taking
Yeah,
a little sabbatical. If they want to reach you, what is the best way? And of course, I'll put it in the show notes, but
yeah.
tell them now, what's the best way?
BrandenLaNette.com, BrandenLaNette.com. You're going to find podcasts, books, whatever. It's all there. So, and Listen Bitch is the podcast. If you're like, I don't want to go to a website, just give me the meat and potatoes. Yeah. Listen Bitch, Apple or Spotify. I'm there. And if you're going to reach out and message me, I say Facebook. Literally, Messenger is my go to. I'm never on Instagram. And if I am, I forget my messages. Facebook Messenger is the best way to reach me.
That's awesome. We will have a Facebook group for this podcast, which I hope you
Yay.
will join. I'll be sending you an invite. I
Absolutely.
hope you'll join. And I'll have that. I'm not going to say that right now, but I'll have it in the show notes
Oh,
when we
yeah.
publish it, just because I want to put it together, make sure we get the right name, and everything else, because I don't want
Absolutely.
anybody confusing us with somebody else. So,
Right.
and you're right, there's a lot of junk out there. So,
Yep.
Branden, I cannot thank you enough for your candor, for your
Yeah.
honesty, for just being authentic as you always are. And I've been following you for a long time. And I know that's just who you are.
Yeah.
But I also want to thank you for just taking a risk. This is a new
Yeah.
project. And
Hmm.
when I asked you about it, you were like, let's do it.
Yeah.
You weren't like, well, what's the plan? How many downloads do you think you're going to
Oh,
have? And you were just like, boom, let's go.
yeah.
I love that. I appreciate that. And
Yeah.
I think that that spirit is what people need to have a successful podcast, is what you got right
Right.
there. So
Right.
thank you for that.
Absolutely.
And thank you for being on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. You guys have a great day.
All right. I'll be talking to you again soon, I hope.
Sounds
Um,
good.
as far as everybody else goes, folks, listen, if you're thinking of starting a podcast, stop thinking. Do it now.
Yep.
Take Brandon's advice. Take messy action. Go for it. You can wait and think of a million reasons why that you need to stop and wait and think. When I was starting mine, I was getting completely caught up in the paralysis by analysis. My wife looked at me and said, "Why don't you just go downstairs and record something?" And I did, and it was terrible. But then I fixed it, and it became my episode one. And everything since then has worked out beautifully because at one point somebody gave me some good advice and I went and started. So listen, folks, start. Just do it. Just believe it. Until next time.